Alright guys, today we're visiting our second Missouri-based distillery. These guys have been distilling for generations. Gregory Pope and his wife moved from Salt Lake City, Utah to Branson, Missouri to start the distillery. They actually got their start on Moonshiners, and they have award-winning spirits that aren't just distributed in Missouri, or the US for that matter. But I guess you're just gonna have to follow along to find out more. Check it out.
Let's go ahead and go into the distillery.
Aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, so this is where the magic happens. This stainless steel bezel is our mash tun. Regardless as to what the ingredient is, it starts its journey here.
Yeah.
If it's an all-grain product that ferments to be beer, beer then gets distilled into whiskey, right? So when your beer grows up, it aspires to be whiskey. All fruit-based products ferment to wine. Wines then get distilled into brandy. And as we talked earlier, all rums are 100% cane sugar.
Yep.
Those are the three categories the federal government recognizes: whiskeys, brandies, rums. Everything else, like a tequila, a gin, a vodka, cordials, liqueur, eau de vie, everything else like that falls under distilled spirit specialty, which is the government's other box.
Gotcha.
Right? This is basically a 738-gallon stainless steel triple-walled Yeti. Okay. We use the same vacuum insulation technology in the exterior wall that Yeti Coolers uses. Then we have an internal dimple jacket wall that we'll use for heat exchange. Finally, a solid interior wall. We do closed fermentation here. We don't do open fermentation. On closed fermentation, we introduce the specific strain of yeast that we want the fermentable wort to have access to.
Okay.
Right? On open fermentation, your pots are exposed to the wind and how it blows. So this way we can control, by doing closed fermentation, the specific flavor profiles. Once fermentation is completed, we'll transfer 300 of the 600 gallons into each of the two stills. We are the only distillery in the world that runs this vertical canted column. It's a technology that I invented, and it gives me a higher proof, better flavored product in one run than any other distillery in the world. In fact, every other distillery has to redistill their product between 3 to 6 times to get to the same proof point that I do in one.
Wow.
This is a 250-gallon Cypress water bucket.
Okay.
Inside here's 100 linear foot of 1-inch copper pipe.
Okay.
Cold round and round, obviously, and that condenses the ethanol from a gas back to a liquid so that we can capture it as it comes off the still.
Right.
What we do that's different is we utilize a stagnant water technology. Water will naturally thermocline.
Right.
If you think about the old-time distillers, the reason they were always looking for fresh flowing water was to keep the worm cold during the run. When you let the water stay stagnant, I get a 120-degree thermocline in only 7 inches. At the end of any given distillation run, the water evaporates out to about here.
Okay.
And it takes me about a nickel's worth of electricity for my ice maker to turn 38 gallons of water into 400 pounds of ice. We'll put that 400 pounds of ice into here, and that'll fill me to the top of the top black band here. We'll turn that in with a drill and paddle and dissolve that ice so that the entirety of the 250 gallons is at 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So by not perpetually pumping cold water into the bottom to let the hot water siphon off the top, we can save billions of gallons of water every year. And it saves on electricity.
Well, not to mention time.
Right?
Time is money.
That's right, time is money.
So I'd love to take a stab at just talking through kind of the history of the distillery.
I'm a 3rd generation distiller, first one legal.
Right. I think you mentioned earlier, this distillery was on Moonshiners?
Yeah, we were showcased on Moonshiners, and that was obviously after we were open and legal. Yeah, we're the pilot episode for a spin-off from the Moonshiners franchise called Moonshiners Whiskey Business.
Gotcha.
It's a play on risky business, right?
I like that. Mm-hmm.
You have to have your property purchased, your building constructed, all of your equipment in and operational before you can apply for your federal license.
And then you have to have the federal license before you can actually legally start distilling.
That's right.
So,
yep.
yeah.
So, yeah, you have to do everything backwards, right? Yep. That being said, I've kept my nose clean my whole life. My wife had a DEA license at the time that we got licensed. She's a surgeon. So we knew that there was nothing in our past that would tell the feds to say no.
Gotcha.
It was an easy risk, right? But it was a substantial investment. Some of my earliest conscious memories are helping my grandfather paste up his still, because little teeny fingers can get into crevices where adult fingers cannot.
Yep.
Right? The still is not yet hot, so there's no risk of burn or anything like that, right? So, but I grew up around it. The reality is, as a distiller, and you have to be a superior beer brewer or vintner, because you're going to concentrate those flavor profiles, right, through the act of distillation.
Right.
Those flavors become more concentrated. So if there's something wrong, it sticks out like a neon sign pointing it out, right? We tell people it takes an exceptional beer to make a mediocre whiskey because of those flavor concentration ratios, right? So we make truly world-class spirits. So
did you start with the brewing first?
I learned to make distilled spirits, and then I learned to make beer.
Right.
That being said, before I was legal, I made a lot of beer. Right? So I learned how to make beer very well first. In fact, I was an award-winning brewer on the homebrew side because I wasn't licensed. That gave me the courage to try distillation. When we moved here from Salt Lake City, Utah, we moved here specifically to open a distillery. If you think about alcohol in general, it's kind of the most recession-proof industry out there. You drink when the stock market's up, you drink when the stock market's down, you drink when a child is born, you drink at a birthday, you drink at weddings, you drink at funerals, you drink because it's Thursday.
And I think as COVID's proven with us, liquor sales have been through the roof, whether or not it's at the brewery or bar or whatever. But
that's right.
People are still buying alcohol.
If you want to see anarchy,
take it away.
Take away alcohol, tobacco, and for the few states that have allowed medicinal cannabinoid consumption, or even recreational. Take those elements away from the general populace, and you will see a civil war.
Yeah.
Right?
So where was the decision to move to Branson? I know you mentioned you came from Salt Lake City.
My wife grew up in Blair, Nebraska, and they would come to Branson or the Ozarks for holidays. She fell in love with the area. Mm-hmm. When she was starting her 5-year plan, working toward retirement, she wanted to come here. I tried to convince her to move to Alaska. I'd lived there in the past. She just didn't. It wasn't that she was afraid of the cold, because Nebraska is colder than Anchorage. It's the seasonal affective disorder. Yeah. It's the lack of sunlight hours that was the biggest catalyst. We both still wanted mountains. Right? So here in the Ozark, we have mountains.
Yeah.
It's just Alaska green, but you don't shovel sunshine. So it checked all of our boxes. Plus the tax rate in Missouri is fantastic for
absolutely.
And I mean the property taxes. I hear people that are locals complain about property taxes, but coming from a different state, we're 1/10 of 1% in property taxes versus what we paid at other states. Let's see.
So what can we see from the distillery coming now?
This is our brick house. We keep our barrels climate controlled. There is much discussion about the benefits of expansion and contraction from heating and cooling.
Absolutely.
While we're in a climate-controlled environment, the barrels don't go through the extreme temperature changes. They still go through a temperature change. It's cooler on the bottom than it is on the top just because hot rises.
Yep.
For myself, the flavor profiles that I'm looking for and the smoothness of the liquor, I found that a climate-controlled brick house is best.
Okay.
We've got bourbon, we've got our American single malt, we've got rum, This particular barrel right here is one that we'll be bottling very shortly. We took a fresh dumped bourbon barrel and shipped it to Wisconsin for the purpose of barrel aging of pure maple syrup. Wow. When that maturation process was completed, we got some of the bourbon barrel aged maple syrup and then got our barrel back, right? We promptly filled it with a moonshine. Yeah. Right? And it's been almost a year resting in this cask. So we've submitted our COLA, which is Certificate of Label Approval, to the federal government to be able to call it a bourbon barrel aged maple moonshine.
That's so many things into one.
Right. Yeah. We got the recipe approved from the federal government already, so the formula aspect has been approved by the feds. As far as I know, I'm going to be the only person, potentially globally, to have a barrel-aged maple-flavored moonshine.
I may be wrong on this. You don't traditionally see even a barrel-aged moonshine in general.
That's right.
Let alone flavor infused like that.
Yeah, we did one barrel of just moonshine a couple years ago and let it age for a year, and it sold out in about 3 weeks.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it really shocked me how flavorful it was. Yeah. Right? I mean, most people just see sugar shines and check them off as bad. I saw it as a potential to make a spectacular barrel-aged product. And it was. I mean, it went super fast. If you look at the barrel, you can see we're seeping a little bit. Oh, yeah. Pick some of this with your finger.
Let's see.
And give that a taste.
Oh, that's just straight. That looks like sugar right there. Tastes like rock candy.
But it's got the whiskey flavor behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of that whiskey after the finish.
Right?
Oh, that's wonderful.
So you can taste the moonshine, you can taste the maple.
And
I nibble on this.
I was going to say, I just want to pick it and just snack on it.
Yeah, it's truly magnificent. The next element that we have coming down the pipe, we just also got formula approval for. As you know, I keep 4 beehives on the property for the honey that goes in our honey moonshine. We've submitted for honey bourbon. Right? There's a bunch of those on the market already, which is why we're trying to jump on that quote-unquote bandwagon. But since we make an internationally and national gold medal winning single barrel bourbon whiskey, why not add a little bit of honey from the bees on our property and see what we can do with that, right? Yeah,
that sounds amazing.
In true Ozark fashion, you do with what you have.
Absolutely.
Right?
Waste not, want not.
That's right.
It's about 4 years that y'all have been up and running. So how far is the reach of Missouri Ridge?
I'm throughout the state of Missouri.
Okay.
Missouri is the only state in the nation that allows distillers to self-distribute.
Okay.
So I distribute my own product. We also export our single barrel bourbon whiskey to the United Kingdom.
Interesting. So why the UK?
Contract came as a benefit, if you would, from our television show. That's how the United Kingdom found out about us. The Discovery Channel is aired globally.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So somewhere in excess of 350 million people globally have seen our TV show.
So
right? So, yeah, 1 or 2, right? But they reached out to us and said, hey, we're interested in American whiskeys. I ship them the different products that we manufacture. And they sent me a check and, so we started wanting to,
it's a good way to start.
To import our bourbon whiskey. The gentleman that does all of the labels for Carlsberg beer did the label for our bourbon whiskey in the UK.
Wow.
Right?
It's so interesting what you've built so far. And maple, bourbon barrel, moonshine. I can't even keep it all straight in my head.
Right. Bourbon barrel aged maple moonshine.
Yeah. Oh, that's just beautiful. I'm trying to think of anything else. Is there anything else that you want to get out?
Try our barbecue, right? The smokehouse that I have came from a bodacious barbecue restaurant in Texas, out of the Tyler, Texas. They were getting a larger smoker. So Bodacious is, I think, the largest Texas chain, and I think the oldest chain of barbecue restaurants in Texas. They make spectacular barbecue. Everybody's heard of the Bull Bodacious. That was named after the barbecue restaurant, not the other way around. We make our own barbecue sauce, right? So we use the wash left over in the still after a distillation run as the base for our barbecue sauce. Currently, we have a bourbon-based barbecue sauce. We had a moonshine base, and we're going to do an American single malt. You know, so we'll have a Scotch-based barbecue sauce or a corn-based, you know, corn liquor, whatever we're doing at the time. We use that as the base for our barbecue sauce. Texas barbecue is what inspired what we do, but in Utah they use different spices. And I've incorporated some of those into our dry rub.
I wanted to thank you so much for spending some time with us, letting us taste some of the spirits and the beers. They were awesome.
The only other thing I would mention is when COVID started, right? We became the state of Missouri's largest producer of hand sanitizer. We've moved 54,000 gallons through here and supplied Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri with hand sanitizer.
That's awesome.
Right, so you can,
well, thanks again so much.
Thank you.
Really
Cheers.
Appreciate your time. Cheers
no
to you
worries.
as well.
Cheers,
Have
brother.
a blessed day.
Thanks, man.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today at Missouri Ridge Distillery in none other than Branson, Missouri. As we talked about, they got their start on Moonshiners, and we're actually the pilot for a Moonshiner spin-off, Whiskey Business, a play on words, risky business. And as we talked about with Greg, not only do they distill amazing spirits, moonshine, whiskey, rum, but they also have a great brewery as well. Not to mention that awesome bourbon barrel-aged maple moonshine. I cannot wait to try that. But I guess right now, I'll just have to settle for their delicious Howlin' Wee Heavy single malt. Cheers. Keep in mind, as we talked about, they can only be found in Missouri and apparently the UK. So the next time you're in the UK, definitely give some Missouri whiskey a try. I'm having a great time meeting with and sharing the stories behind a lot of these awesome distilleries and breweries. Recently we did a few really great live streams with Austin Craft Spirits and their Austin 101 Light Whiskey, and Derelict Airship Distillery, the maker of Violet Crown Spirits, a variety of cordials, liqueurs, and even absinthes. One of the first absinthe distilleries in Texas. So unique, so different, and honestly so delicious. So check those out. Keep following Pourcast. We're getting so close to our next giveaway. Thank you so much to our followers. We are at just over 300 followers on Instagram and almost 60 on YouTube. So really excited. Thank you so much to everybody following us. Keep promoting the channel. And remember, once we get to 500 followers on Instagram, we've got another bottle giveaway. Ooh, before I forget, another exciting announcement for Pourcast. We're actually partnering with Last Cut Crystal. They're a Instagram and Etsy business with a gentleman up in Ohio who cuts and polishes his own crystal glass barware. We have a great example of it here where he actually custom cut and sandblasted the logo for Pourcast into the bottom, this Schatzweissel glass. A little different than the typical Glencairn style glass, but as you can see, it has some beautiful barley or wheat stalks on it to promote that love of whiskey and beer and some of the fundamentals that help create those beautiful libations. So keep an eye out as we develop that partnership and potentially offer a discount code to Pourcast followers for his amazingly beautiful products. And as always, keep pouring.